Hi everyone, this is Miss Boswell, and today in this video lesson we are going to talk about quotation marks and using them properly. So by the end of this video you should be able to use quotation marks properly in different contexts. So let's get started. Okay, so I have about 5 rules and examples that go with each rule. So the first rule about quotation marks is that the quotation marks go around only the spoken words. So only the words that someone has stated, that's where you put the quotation marks. Quotation marks always go outside of any punctuation, such as like a comma or a period. So let's look at the following example and keep the rules in mind as we look at those examples. Okay, John said, "Where are you going?" So in the example, in this example, first of all, you want to capitalize at the beginning of a quote. And if you notice, I have my quotations around what John actually said, and I also have my punctuation within that quotation mark. The next example, same idea. Maria replied, "I am going home." So the quotation mark is around exactly what Maria said. I am going home. And if you notice, the punctuation, the period, is within the quotation mark as well. So let's look at another rule and example. Quotation rules and examples number 2. The reference to the speaker, such as saying like Maria replied or John said, so the reference to the speaker may come, it can come at the beginning of the sentence, the middle of the sentence, or at the end of the sentence or the quote. So a comma always separates the reference to the speaker from the quotation marks itself or the quote itself. So let's take a look at an example of that. Okay, so we have this example that says, "I don't believe, comma, said Mark, comma, that we have met." So in this example, we have the reference to the speaker in the middle of the actual quote. And when you have the reference to the speaker in the middle of the quote, you definitely want to make sure your quotation marks are around what the person actually stated. If you notice, I still have my comma, I still need my comma, and I still have my end quotes. And then if you look at the second half of the sentence or the second half of the quotation mark, the T on that is not capitalized. And the reason is because it's in the middle of the sentence. So anytime you have the reference of your speaker in the middle of your quote, if it breaks up your quote, then you want to make sure that you do not use a capital letter on the second part of the quote. Also notice that I have said Mark, like my reference to my speaker, and I have a comma at the end of the reference of my speaker. Okay, so let's look at rule number 3. So if a quotation contains 2 or more sentences together, the quotation marks are placed in front of the first sentence and after the last sentence only. So let's look at this. Juan said, "I am very tired. I am also hungry and thirsty." So this is in quotes because this is what Juan actually said. And although, you know, this is actually 2 sentences, you still want to put a quote around everything he says. Okay? So even though it's after tired, we have a period there because that's the end of the first sentence. Still keep going with what Juan stated and then just when he's finished speaking, that's where you would put your quotation marks. And notice I have the reference of my speaker, which is Juan said, at the beginning of my sentence, and so I place a comma. All right, let's look at rule number 4. A comma comes after the last word in the quote only if the sentence continues after the quote. Otherwise, an end mark is used. Okay, so here I have, you are a good friend. So here's the comma, again, at the end of my quote. And I have the reference of my speaker actually at the end of my quotation mark. And I do need a period at the end because all of this is considered a sentence. So you want to treat it like a sentence, even though there are quotation marks, but you still need to have an end punctuation. All right, and finally, rule number 5. Okay, so an indirect quote tells what the speaker said as told by the writer. Indirect quotes are not put in quotation marks because they are not the exact words of a speaker. So let's look at this example. Jack said that he needs a second job. This is an indirect quote because it's being told by someone else. It's being told by a writer, or someone is saying what Jack said. But a direct quote would be, Jack said, I need a second job. Okay, so you can tell the difference here. You know, it's Jack speaking because it's in first person where he says I. And then here, this is not in first person, and you can tell that because it says he. Okay, so we have this written in second person. Okay, and also notice here with the direct quote again, I have the reference to my speaker, Jack said, I have my comma, and then even at the end of the quote, I have my punctuation within my quotation marks. Okay, so that is the end of this video lesson. I hope that it was very helpful for you. I hope that you learned how to properly use quotation marks, and also subscribe to my YouTube channel.